Done, Gary.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, are we ready? It's recording. Good morning and welcome to the October 6th policy session. And Gary, what's on the agenda first? Oh, you want to maybe roll call?
Start with roll and make sure you're all here. Chair Bernard.
Here.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner Humberston.
Here.
Commissioner Fisher.
Here.
Commissioner Savas.
Here.
All commissioners are present. Yes, we'll start with issues, commissioners, and with wildfire update. We have Nancy Bush, Director of Disaster Management and Incident Commander of our Emergency Operations Center for an update. And then we have several other topics related to wildfires, but we'll start with Nancy's general update. Go ahead, please, Nancy.
All right, thank you and good morning, everyone. So just a few updates here on the fires themselves. So Riverside Fire is still at 138,085 acres and is 57% contained. They are seeing a little bit more smoke coming from that fire. So they just want the public to know that that is going to be happening as they continue to work on the fire. But that does not mean that the fire is growing. In fact, they do not anticipate any growth at this time. Beachy is at 46,323 acres here in Clackamas County, and it is 59% contained overall. They are also having the same issues there. There's more smoke, and people are calling 911 to report that smoke. But again, that does not mean that the fire is growing. So they would, again, want everyone to know that. In addition to that, just want to remind everyone too that despite the recent rains and the cooler temperatures that are going on, that the lands protected by the Oregon Department of Forestry in Clackamas County, Marion County, and Linn counties are still closed, and backyard burning is still prohibited during our fire season here in this in our region. Unger Fire and Dowdy Fire and Graves Creek are all at 100% containment. Wilhoit is at 94% containment. So they continue to work on that as well. In addition, here in the EOC, we've been working a lot on our debris removal and getting some word out to all of those that may have some damage. So we have finalized 2 rights of entry forms. One is for hazardous waste only, and the other one is for any debris clearance that could be removed through DEQ or the Department of Justice. We are contacting anyone that we think could have some damage or might need to use those particular offerings that we do have. So we have actually sent letters in the mail to those addresses that we think that might need that, that information. We also have people that are working with everyone too that comes into our resource center, which is open for sure through Saturday, and it is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Hey, Nancy.
Yeah.
Two questions. If their house is burnt up, how do they get their mail?
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing several other things. But that's not the only thing we're doing, but that was one thing that we are trying, because we know that it is difficult to reach some people, especially in the more rural areas. So you're right, they may not be able to get their mail, but we are also doing a lot of other contacts. And in fact, in the next probably few days, we'll actually start making some phone calls.
So the other one is, you said the Department of Justice.
Well, it's because it's FEMA, so it's all under Homeland Security.
Okay, thank you.
And we're working through those issues with the state of Oregon as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very good question. And to get the forms too, I just want to mention that you can go to clackamas.us/wildfires and go to the tab there that has right. I'm also really happy to note that we have no more boil water orders in Clackamas County. All of those have now gone away. And so we're getting that information out as well to our population. because that's been a concern, of course, as we have started the whole thing, not only for the area that lost pressure because of the fires whenever power was turned off, and also along the corridor, the 26 corridor, where we also had the power shut down in order to prevent wildland fires. So that is my update.
So Paul has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, mine's more of a comment on the mail thing. There's a three things that people can do. They can make sure they got a mailbox, in front of the property. I mean, that's not the best if they're not there to watch it or pick it up, but you can actually have the mail held at the post office, like you're on vacation or something. They offer that service, as well as have it redirected temporarily to another location, like a family member or a PO box or something like that. So there's options for that people should and have available to them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I just want to mention too, we're trying absolutely everything that we can to get this out there, because there is a time limit on this and they have to be signed by October 16th. So we're making several efforts to get the information out.
All right, any other questions? Don't see any. Nancy?
Right, so Nancy, if you please stick around. And next, if we could bring in Jeff Munns. So commissioners, there is a suggestion for an additional emergency declaration addressing debris management. We have Stephen Madcore and Jeffrey Munns from County Council to brief you on this and see if you want to do either a separate additional declaration or merge this with your existing declaration. There are challenges to both. So Stephen or Jeff, whoever would like to start, please.
Sure, thank you. We got most of this form from the contractor who's helping state, as well as, the state Department of Justice and Office of Emergency Management, to put this emergency declaration in place to help with the cleanup of the hazardous waste. The recommendation to have this as a separate one comes from the idea that the efforts to clean up the hazardous waste are likely to last much longer than the emergencies necessary for the actual fires. And then it is also consistent with what the other counties are being asked to adopt, and that way the state is sort of working, in the same framework throughout the state as they continue to do their work with FEMA and DEQ and so on. But what it does is it creates a state of declaration of emergency so they can go in and clean up this hazardous waste. Especially important here as the rainy season is coming. We don't want these materials to be washing into our watersheds and so on. And so it is something that we need to address quickly. That's also why the right of entry agreement has such a short timeline on it, so we can get the contractors in the field and get this work started. So it's a very long document, unfortunately. It's not one that we drafted completely. I did change it in a few ways to fit our county, as well as to address a couple of things so that it's consistent with the governor's declaration of emergency, as well as our earlier ones that are all using ORS Chapter 401. Other than that, I don't have a lot of other details to share about it. It's pretty, just another declaration. Unfortunately, it's necessary so we can do this important work of cleaning up the hazardous waste that's out there on these properties.
So, Gary.
Yeah, so commissioners, my opinion is that this seems to be confusing. You have an existing emergency declaration, so why not just add this to your existing declaration? Yet the key point is what Jeff just mentioned. It means the hazardous waste cleanup could take months, and it means you would keep extending the existing declaration longer than perhaps you would want to. So to me, that would be probably the only reason to do a separate document. But I am concerned, in my opinion, it's confusing to the public. Why are you having a separate emergency declaration? Although again, Jeff just explained why. So I encourage you to consider that as you make your decision here.
Paul.
Yeah, I just suggest maybe we just title the emergency, fire debris management or cleanup, state of emergency, something to the effect that it stands out as not related to our other one, but it kind of self-defines the purpose. So I'm supportive.
Ken?
Well, if I recall, Nancy Bush said that it's going to take a significant amount of time to actually do this cleanup. Obviously, we have to find contractors and everything else. So my thought is just attach this to the original emergency declaration. We can always modify or rescind the emergency declaration if we come out ahead of schedule. But didn't we also want to have this to make sure that everything is documented for funding in the future, for getting reimbursement in the future?
So yes, I mean, the declaration that we have for wildland fires now does do that. And we are now in that recovery phase. So the one that we do have right now could sunset just because we're in the recovery phase and we're already starting to get our funding in. And then we do have the COVID emergency declaration, which is a little bit different. We really do need to have it in place throughout the event. I know this is confusing, but the one that we have for wildland fire will be sunsetting because we're going into recovery.
So are you telling me that you would normally do this as two separate actions?
So I admittedly have not done this in about 12 years. So because we have not had an event this big in Clackamas County since I've lived here. But yes, there was in my previous experience, we did have, as we did for, very, very large, we had mostly, it was either tornadoes or flooding, we would actually morph into different declarations in order to get the work done.
So what is your recommendation specifically?
I would actually take the recommendation that Mr. Munns is saying. I think that we would actually do this declaration. I would do it separate from the one we have now. And I think we do need to explain that to the public, but I think it makes it cleaner in the long run for both the state and for FEMA.
Okay, then I would so move.
Second.
So commissioners, do you want this in front of you at Thursday's business meeting with a revised header on there saying that it's applicable to hazardous waste and debris management? Is that what I'm hearing?
Sure. Yes.
Chair, you're on mute, Jim, if you're speaking.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Paul, your hand is up, but that was prior. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna make the motion, but Ken did it.
All right, Christina.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson?
Aye.
Commissioner Savis?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much.
We'll add it to this Thursday's business meeting agenda for you to formalize there.
Okay.
One more wildfire. This is not on your agenda. If you could bring in Kathy Rastetter, please, Christina. So commissioners, there have been some fantastic offers of some pro bono legal support to help our community with wildfire recovery. So we want to confirm for you what you are willing and comfortable for us to support here. So I didn't explain that very well. Stephen or Kathleen, can you please explain what the request is?
Sure. Good morning. We disaster management received a request from an attorney to have two pieces to the request: a list of affected people from the wildfires, and Nancy Bush can speak to that more, but apparently our forms and our contact with our citizens say that we will not share such information. And second, he wants us to provide him space to set up this Saturday to a booth or some such mechanism for offering services to the public pro bono for help with insurance loss information. And council is uncomfortable with that. Aside from the privacy piece of the names, council is uncomfortable with providing this attorney with space because it appears that the county is endorsing these legal services. And that's, in council's opinion, not an appropriate thing for the county to do. This person's free to advertise services and offer what he wants in our county, but to have the county provide that space looks like we're endorsing a particular attorney or set of attorneys. So we thought we would bring this to the board, but that request has been made and he wants some space for this Saturday.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I agree. It'd be somewhat of a violation of one's privacy to be giving out the numbers. But if it is indeed, something that could be of benefit, is there a way of maybe notifying the victims separately, privately, that there are opportunities available, and add this to that if number one, this is all legitimate and all that sort of thing. So, but I agree with your concern, Kathleen.
so before I go to Sonia, I think she's a lawyer. Do we know this lawyer? I mean, has anyone looked him up?
He's a plaintiff's attorney in Portland. I looked him up, but we don't know him. He apparently has other attorneys that are willing to volunteer as well. I mean, it's a noble thought, but we don't know this person or these attorneys at all. And so for the county to be promoting these, the danger is that if the citizens then are unhappy with the advice that they give, and they come back to the county and say, why did you put me in touch with this particular person? I'm quite unhappy with how this all went. So, and it's not something we would typically do to offer, promote someone's services. I know Nancy may be able to speak better to this, but I do know just in general that EOC is offering, providing information on legal services like legal aid and that kind of thing in general. But I don't know the specifics of that.
All right, Sonia?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know a lot about this. I do know that the attorney, Mark Johnston, reached out to me to get connected. So I connected him through Gary's advice to Jamie Poole. But I do know that there are many lawyers that have been trained. They went to a training to do this. This is really an effort to assist. And so what I would suggest we do is just be very clear in our communications that this is not endorsed by the county. But for people that have a loss, and I mean, I'm seeing it all over the place. It's really tough to figure out where to go, what to do, how to maneuver. Do you go through FEMA? Do you go through your private insurance? What's the process? You don't want to misspeak. I mean, people need support through this. So it's my understanding that these lawyers are offering to assist during this time, and it's quite a few. I think it would be terrible if we didn't provide some, not the names, of course, we can't violate confidentiality of our residents ever, but a space with a disclaimer at a resource center. I don't see why there would be a problem with that.
Ken?
Is there any reason an attorney can't stand outside the door of the facility down there in Malala in the public space and simply pass out his card to people and simply say to them that if you need the legal services, we are providing pro bono services. They're not inside. We're not doing anything that in any way, shape, or form endorses. But that's obviously where people are going to be. And I see no reason why any attorney couldn't do something like that.
That's right. They're free to advertise, appear, do whatever they want to do in any of these communities. What he's asking of the county is that we either provide a list of people or a space that he knows he will come in contact with them, and we don't recommend that happen. But he and other attorneys are free to go set up in a parking lot of the library or a city hall or something if they get permission, and they could do that on their own. There'd be nothing that we would do to prohibit that.
Martha and then Sonia.
Yeah, I'm thinking rather than have it be under our umbrella, to potentially maybe approach a nonprofit, or as you said, approach the city libraries and see if that's something that they would potentially. However, I'm worried about the liability because I don't know these lawyers either. And if we do it under our umbrella, I just don't think it's a good idea. I think that there are other venues that maybe these folks could look at, and that's what I would suggest.
Sonia, and then Paul.
Well, I do know the group of lawyers because it's the Oregon Trial Lawyers Association that's organizing. I'm former president of the organization, so I can tell you it's a legitimate group of attorneys that are offering to help. I'm just curious, Nancy, what types of resources are offered at the Resource Center? Is it all just government, or are there other support services that are offered?
It is all government. It's either state, local, or federal. And we do have a couple of CBOs that are in there, like providing food resources and those types of things. So it's primarily government with some CBOs that we've been working with here, which is typical.
Yeah, so CBO meaning community-based organization.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, you guys. I think if we're going to allow community-based organizations of any kind having a group of, and if it needs to be under the auspices of the Oregon State Bar or any other form of, if it being the Oregon Trial Lawyers isn't, I just think it's insulting to not provide at least the service to our residents, because it's just so hard to maneuver through this. And that's simply why lawyers are being called to getting the training, if they don't have specific training in this, to offer the support.
Paul?
Yeah, in my, I can see the ethical aspects of this, and I'm sure that there's a code of ethics for the organization that they operate on, and that really should be right up on the front end facing, public facing, so that people have the option and they have, access to all of the legal assistance available to them, including legal aid. So if it indeed is on an association with a public facing code of ethics that people can read, and there's a disclaimer and so forth, then I think it would be based on all the good intent. It'd be a shame not to be able to have those services available to those who can't afford it. So some kind of a means that is, again, passes the sniff test, the ethical aspects. When I did educational things, and I did it for free, and I helped people for free in my private sector business, I made it very clear, and I actually went out of my way to make sure that from the beginning to the end, I wasn't there to take a dime from anyone. And so that was just something that was an agreed upon effort. And it's very hard to do. It's sometimes very hard to do that when, they need some other assistance that costs money that I can't provide, that they need to pursue. And then they ask me for a recommendation on where to get that service or those pieces. That's where it gets, sticky. And I've gotten in trouble recommending people in the past where they had a bad experience. So I think everything that staff is saying here is valid as far as concerned, but again, be a shame not to, have the information available so they can actually reach someone in need of services.
Okay, Gary?
So Commissioner, staff has made a recommendation to you. This rises to your level of decision making. So we'd like you to tell us, do you want us to move forward with this or not?
So my opinion is that giving them a booth it does not put, well, I don't think it is a liability. Give them a booth as long as they have a disclaimer up front. So I'm good with the booth, not the names. So
And
what do you want to do?
I would agree with that.
Paul?
Well, yeah, as long as there is a public facing guidelines or guiding principles, code of ethics, agreements on what's going to be provided at no cost and so on. As long as that's public facing, And there again, that there is that disclaimer that the county is not associated. This is not being promoted by the county. All of those precautions.
Ken,
It still puts us in a position of being the deep pocket that anybody's going to look at that's dissatisfied. So I see no reason why an attorney can't set up something right outside and do it privately and offer their services without the imprimatur in any way, shape, or form of the county. So
okay,
I'm not comfortable with it.
Martha,
Microphone.
I said, I agree with Ken.
okay, so it sounds like we got 3 people who say they can have a booth as long as there's a disclaimer. All right, got direction.
Where's the booth gonna be though, folks?
Well, inside the building.
What building?
Oh, well, I thought they were doing it at the resource center in
I assume
Malawa.
that's what,
Is that a county facility?
No,
Well, it's not our decision to make. Why don't we just provide Mark Johnson the address of the resource center and tell him that he can go deal with them directly?
okay. So that's Nancy, something he could do?
I think they're going to probably point to us because we're the ones between us and FEMA. They're going to point to us and say, that's really up to them because we're the ones that have put together the resource center. I think it will still be a county decision.
I
Okay,
think
so
the decision has been made that we support it, but we're not necessarily providing them with the physical space and assets to do their solicitations.
So, and yeah, Mr. Madcore, I could work on that with the city, or I'm sorry, it's with the school,
And so has anybody informed Mark Johnson of that particular location?
not to my knowledge, but I suspect that he knows about it because he's been asking for the space to meet with the residents. So either he knows that there is a space or he suspects we have one.
And I mean, it's been widely advertised, so. Yeah.
Well,
Well, I just want to just reiterate, Jim, just for clarification, that all those things I pointed out, you know, that would qualify my yes vote.
Yeah.
So if those aren't there, then I'm out. But there's another way of approaching this, and that is that they could have their information available and posted. They don't have to be there. There doesn't have to be a live body or a booth. It literally could be something that is a handout or informational that gives them the contact for those legal services. It doesn't have to be a booth or a person or a presence.
okay. Sonia?
Yeah, I just want to remind people that every decision that we make, there are people at the other end of that decision. So if we are offering a resource center where people can go and get information, it would sure be nice for that person who has got questions or concerns to have, if someone's there who's a licensed attorney who can answer their questions.
I'm sure.
Okay,
they can manage
so-
that.
All right, so you got that. All right,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
the senior center in Oregon City has an attorney come in periodically to offer consultation for people on estate planning and whatnot like that. I'm not sure how they do that and avoid any liability, but maybe there's some information we could gain from talking to them about it before we make any final decisions.
yeah, well, Milwaukee does a similar thing, Milwaukee Center,
So maybe-
which is a county facility. They have accountants, tax preppers, and stuff like that there too, so.
So how do, you know, the question is how do they do that and basically avoid the liability question? Because that's really what is the fundamental issue as the county that we're concerned with here. So
Okay.
I'm just going to ask that we check with those, either the Milwaukee Center or the senior center here in Oregon City, find out what they do and see if it's applicable to our situation.
Okay, Sonia, and that's the last one where we've got it.
Ken, I just will let you know that lawyers are regulated by the Oregon State Bar, and all lawyers are required to have lots of insurance. So I don't really see the need for going and asking those questions. It's built into a law license. Lawyers have to have liability insurance, and everything a lawyer does, even if they give advice without payment, they're responsible for that advice and they can be sued for it. So Just want to let you know
Yeah,
that.
well, I wasn't really concerned about them being sued. I'm concerned about us being sued.
Well, the liability would be with the lawyer if the lawyer made a mistake.
All right, so do you guys know what you're doing? Your direction, Kathleen, Stephen?
Believe so.
Okay, Nancy?
Yes, I will first talk to the school and go through that and work with Kathleen on that, and then we'll determine how that's going to work.
All right, thank you.
But I want to clarify that we're going forward. We're not coming back to you again on this. Is that right?
Right.
We're still going
Right.
forward. Okay, very good. All right, thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
All right, any more wildfire related questions before we move on away from wildfires?
Don't see any hands.
Okay, very good. Now, next, coronavirus update. Go ahead, please, Nancy.
All right. So here in Oregon, we have 35,049 positive cases, 572 deaths, 33,329 positives. Actually, I think that number is wrong. I apologize for that. Clackamas County is 2,567 positive, 63 deaths, 63,280 positives. Multnomah County, 7,576 positives, 144 deaths, 148,213 positives. Washington County has 4,810 positives, 61 deaths, 96,183 positives. Statewide, we have 132 that are hospitalized. 32 of those hospitalized are in ICU beds. 15 are on ventilators. There's 179 ICU beds that are available here statewide, and there's 811 ventilators. The cases for the week of September 28th through October 4th here in Clackamas County is 143, which is 34.2 per 100,000. As of October 5th, 2020, we're looking at, right now we're working 27 outbreaks. 9 of those are in a workplace. 2 of those are in food and farm. Long-term care facilities or retirement homes is 13. Daycares is 1. In schools is 1. Social 1, and other is 0, and healthcare settings is 0, again for a total of 27. I just also wanted to mention, I got some information on our food boxes again for last week, because we've had, as you know, an uprise in food boxes, not only because of COVID, but also with the wildland fires. There were 525 food boxes done last night, was served 981 individuals. Our GO teams, which are our behavioral health GO teams, continue to go out for wildland fire and victims. And we had 17 events last week. And again, they're seeing more and more people come. I think just between wildland fires and COVID, there's a lot of stress in our communities. We're continuing the showers for the houseless here in Oregon City, at the Clackamas Service Center, as well as Moala, and a couple of other places as well. So we continue obviously to support our communities through COVID and moving out as we go into recovery for wildland fires. They're very much, in many ways, they're very much integrated, and just trying to understand that sometimes for our communities has been difficult. And that is my update for today.
Okay, thank you. Paul, and then Ken, and then me. Paul, your mic's not on.
I just want to just give my review. As I look at the numbers every day for the counties as far as the outbreaks, and so we're just average a smidgen over 20 a day, if you will, on a 7-day average, and Nancy's numbers reflect that. And we're below, of the 5 counties, the 5 largest counties, Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, Lane County, and Marion County are the 5 biggest populated counties. And Lane County, of the 5, really had low numbers for a long time, and suddenly they're spiking. Do you know anything about that, Nancy?
I do not, other than it could be for some of the same reasons we're seeing some spikes too, is because of the wildland fires, you know, and people moving about. That's the only thing
Yeah. You know, our numbers didn't spike per se necessarily. I know the timing of Labor Day and the timing of the fires was pretty well aligned. But even still, our numbers didn't go up as sharply as they have in others. But meanwhile, you know, our numbers are still lower. And I thought we had a good discussion on Thursday about the metrics. And it's more about getting metrics that more accurately reflect, you know, the risk at hand and the goals of the state, you know, hospital capacity, PPE capacity, our ability to serve, and so on. So good dialogue. I don't know if there'll be any movement at the state. We'll talk to Dr. President and Nancy on Thursday. But Jim, have you heard anything as far as movement on the state with metrics?
So after we get Ken, I raised my hand, so I'll talk a little bit about that.
All right.
Ken?
Nancy, I think when you were reading your statistics, you got a little mixed up there. You were reading positives for the county, deceased for the county, and then the next number you read, you said positives again. I think you meant negatives.
I meant negatives. I'm so sorry.
And you did that with all three of our local counties, so you might want to repeat that.
Yeah, so the negatives, and for the state of Oregon, I know that number is incorrect, so I apologize for that. But the negatives for Clackamas County is 63,280. Multnomah County negatives is 148,213. Washington County negatives are 96,183. Thank you for catching that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to clarify some things. I'm getting a little bit of pushback from my statements. I think people think that I would like to open up the county wide open and just go for it. That's not true at all. Nancy, Dr. President, and Philip, as well as the health folks in the other counties, are looking at the metrics because there are some facts we know that in certain circumstances the spread is limited, and at the current rate we're going, we'll never get people back in schools or businesses opened up. So what is it that we could look at in Clackamas County that would, and Multnomah, Washington, that would open up opportunities? For example, bowling alleys. And that's just an example. It could be theaters, live theater, it could be all kinds of measures that could be taken in the three counties to open up opportunities, looking at the facts, the incidence of positive tests. So all those things we're going to be looking at, and they are currently working on it, but they told us it would take a few weeks, and that was just last week. So I anticipate that next week, or we also have to wait 21 days after the rise. So we have at least 21 days from the week before we can do anything. So we're looking, and I talked to the governor, by the way. I was on my tractor plowing the field when I found out there was a meeting. So I called her, and I was the second person she asked. And I said, you know, Governor, this is not working. Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas County is never going to get out of this unless we look at some new metrics. And she agreed. And so we're going to work to figure out where we could do this in the counties, the three counties, and feel comfortable with the risk. And that's basically where we're at. But so I'm hoping that Friday, we had 2 meetings canceled because of District 8 meeting, which I believe is Wednesday. And this Monday, there wasn't a lot to report. So we're meeting Friday. And then on Friday, we'll talk about whether we're ready to talk about this on Wednesday of next week. And that's basically my report for now. And we'll see, I don't know, Nancy, do you have any updates on where you guys are?
So, yeah, basically, you said it very well. I mean, we're looking at the science and what it means. And, we have other counties that we can look at, even just here in Oregon, that have been into phase 2. And it's like, what is considered safe, more safe? What is considered, things that you'll put into place to make sure that those that are using your facility or, coming to your theater, whatever, what is the distancing that is safe for that? So we're actually just collecting data right now to talk to our counterparts here in the region and say, where do we want to land on this as a region? So we're actually collecting a lot of data right now.
All right. Anyway, any other questions? Tanya.
So I'm just curious, we're all wanting to make sure we keep the virus under control so that we can move into more economic activity, kids going to school. I'm just curious, and I just don't know, I haven't seen any media on this. Is there been any enforcement of, like through OSHA with workplaces not adhering to the guidelines? What's been happening out there in regards to making sure that this guidance is being followed?
So I don't have all that information. I do know that several things has been turned into OSHA. I do know that they are responding. I don't know at what rate they're responding at. I don't have that information. And I can see if I can get that for you for Thursday.
No, Nancy, if there are fines or penalties.
Okay. And I know there are, I just am not sure what they are.
I was trying to just, before I asked you the question, I was like Googling around trying to see if I could find it easily, but it's really hard to find specific information about what the consequences of not adhering to the guidelines are.
I have a note here to bring that back for Thursday.
All right. No other questions? We'll move on. Gary, thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
All right, next, jurisdictional transfer draft comment letter to Metro. We have Mike Besner and Jamie Stanzany to present. You have a draft that was in your packet, seeking your approval today. So as soon as Mike and Jamie are in, they will update you. There you go, Mike, go ahead.
All right, thanks. Looking for Jamie around there. Are you bringing Jamie in? There she is. So yeah, this is a draft letter to Metro about the jurisdictional transfer process. And as soon as Jamie's on here, there she is. I'm gonna pass it on to her. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, Chair Bernard and commissioners. Good to see you all. Administrator Schmidt here this morning to talk briefly about the jurisdictional transfer letter that was in your packet. I will be brief. It's a brief letter. It's not even a full page. Bottom line is there's a study that's been going on. It's a study that's been done in partnership between Metro and ODOT to look at the urban state-owned arterials in our region and understand which ones might be good candidates for transfer. This is a subject that's been discussed very often at Metro and around the region. Many of them are in very bad states of repair, causing a lot of issues for the people who live and work in those areas. So I would say in general, Clackamas County is not very excited about taking over any of the roads that they analyzed in our area. The two that popped up as good candidates would be a portion of McLaughlin that's in the Milwaukee area, as well as a portion of Willamette Drive in Westland that's in the Westland city boundaries. So the study is interesting. I think there's a lot of implications, but the reason that we suggest that you move this letter forward is there are broad implications on funding. As you all know, funding is challenging right now, and ODOT is facing a big funding gap. And so as we are looking forward to the next STIP process, which is the 24 to 27 STIP that we're all starting to talk about right now, there's only so much money to go around. And what we're seeing is that these jurisdictional transfer projects are raising up in priority. So our partners around the region are saying, we want money from the STIP to go to these priorities. The important thing to think about is that the money that goes to these priorities of jurisdictional transfer, and let me tell you, they're very expensive, it won't go to other places. And so some of the challenges we see with that is that if in looking at this study by itself, great, wonderful opportunities for improving these areas. But where does that money come from and what doesn't get funded is the question. And so that's the big point we wanted to raise with this letter is we appreciate the work that's being done and the thoughtful consideration. But we want to talk about this in the broader context of the STIP process that's kicking off here. And we want also to raise the issue that it's important to look at these urban arterials, but we also need to think about our rural partners and what funding they might need. And the STIP tends to be one of the only funding sources for them. So we wanted to raise that issue as well. We have been talking about this with Commissioner Savas in our DTD update meetings. He has reviewed the letter and added a couple of comments that have already been incorporated. And that's all I have.
Oh,
Yeah, I want to echo what Jamie's shared, most especially the latter piece that if there is a big ask, it's going to come out of really the only bucket that rural has any chance of applying for projects for. I did mention that last evening at OTC when then this came up, not OTC, but our Region 1 ACT meeting. And I had a hard time sleeping last night. It was a very, very concerning, a lot of things that were said that last evening. This is just one element of it, but I strongly encourage that we send the letter. And I really want, while our staff are here, I want to bring up one thing after we take a vote on this letter or approve this letter, however we do it. I want to bring something to your attention right now.
all right. So is there a motion?
I move to approve the letter, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and second to approve the letter as written, I assume. Any further discussion? Christina?
Excuse me.
Please poll us.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Humbertson,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
and Chair Bernard.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Paul?
Yeah, thank you all for your support on that. Last evening, well, what's happening? There is a lot of things happening, and this is an anomaly that so many things are happening so many times, and we're not getting some clear indication. But at the last OTC meeting, there was a map that was released, and it was a Ccmp Congestion Management Plan. I can't remember all the acronyms, but basically it's a proposal to possibly toll all of the projects or corridors, if you will, that have projects assigned. We were trying to get clarity from ODOT staff at the time. And then last night, what was announced, or not announced, but what was mentioned from one of the ODOT leadership there was that the map represents projects in the region. That's how it was introduced. And what's not on the map is, and our staff asked to have it put on the map. We've raised this, but it wasn't present last night. We asked that because a lot of C2C, a lot of the Metro Measure corridors are on the map, except for C2C and Sunrise. They're absent, missing. So we mentioned that again. I don't know if it's going to make it, but what's going to happen is that they timed everything, that they're going to have this early meeting in December 1st, which is an unusual day of the week, a Tuesday, not a Thursday. And they're going to make all these decisions on this particular day. And the other thing that was announced when this map was discussed was some inclination or aspiration to be the first in the nation to do such a broad-based congestion management plan, which is basically tolling. That's how I interpret it. Jamie, you heard that last night. Is that accurate?
I would say it's really complicated, but yes, I think you're summarizing it nicely. I would just add, there's a lot more questions than answers at this point. We've seen a map. We don't really know what it means. Corridors have not been defined, but agree with everything else you said, and especially the fact that everything is coming together in December.
I just want to add real quick also, that map does still say draft on it, right? And we, as Commissioner Savas mentioned, we did strongly comment on it. We're going to reiterate that comment again, since the map was used in another public presentation without being edited.
And like I mentioned, the meeting happens to land on a Tuesday, so I might be inclined, frankly, for a number of reasons. I won't get into everything today, but I might attend that meeting and provide some testimony or concerns that I have if things don't shake out the way they did. We actually bumped up our meeting for the R1 Act to get in front of it, and we're also going to send a letter from the Region 1 Act asking them to delay it because they're not going to introduce the material until December 1st, and then yet they're going to decide on December 1st. So we can't even comment on what they're going to introduce. So it does not feel good. It doesn't have the Oregon public involvement type of notification and all the things that we're accustomed to in this state. So I'm just deeply concerned. I know my other regional colleagues around it, not all, but a number of them expressed concerns and agreement with, we really shared a lot of similarities and echoed a lot of the things that we were concerned about. So I'm very concerned on behalf of our constituents. I'm also very concerned that it looks like we are not, I mean, unless there's a change, but whatever they're going to be doing as far as big projects, they're not going to be in Clackamas County with the exception of maybe I-205. And they expanded the definition of keeping the money in the corridor, keeping the money in the 5.8 miles. Well, they expanded that to the entire length of I-205 from the state of Washington to I-5. So that's not clear to me that they're really going to do the mitigation in the level of detail we have for the impacts for our area. I'm hopeful, but it's not clear, and it's just not fair to have the report come out on the very same day they make the call, and we have no opportunity to comment. That's just unfair.
Sounds like the Aurora Airport. Martha?
Yeah, so I'm just going to ask a direct question here then. Has this been done with intent, do you think, against Clackamas County?
Well, I can't say intent because that's an impossible thing to answer. I mean, I can't say with intent, but on behalf of our rural folks, especially as Jamie outlined, as you've heard me say for a year, the STIP bucket is the only bucket
That they have.
Yep, and then put that aside. The other thing that's really important is that the people that live in rural Clackamas County and urban Clackamas County, 60–70% leave the county every day to go to work. So all of these changes could have a severe impact to them because of our lack of any alternatives such as transit or sidewalks or shuttle services and all those things. So we will be more negatively impacted. Our citizens will be more negatively impacted than any other group, in my opinion.
Martha, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. All right, so we agreed to send the letter. Thank you, Paul, for the update, and move on to the next item. Gary.
Next is a short-term rental update. If Christina, you'd please bring in Dan Johnson and Jennifer Hughes. There was a memo related to this that was in your packet. I want to say, commissioners, this is not a 30-minute conversation about this topic. This is really guidance from you on helping meet your goal, which you've shared. You'd like to have movement on this by the end of this calendar year. So staff is asking for some clarification on getting them to that point. So again, I'm gonna help here. Please do not have a 45-minute conversation about this today. We'll schedule a future session. This is just to get guidance from you on next steps. So with that, Dan or Jennifer, please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. So at your September 9th, I think it was, policy session, you had a discussion around priorities through the remainder of the year, and short-term rentals came up as one of those topics. I want to harken back to March 11th. That was basically our 9th policy session on this particular topic. And we were so close to getting something that I thought we could get consistency around and get approved. And then we had a number of things hit, obviously primarily COVID. And that has put a wrench in a couple of the options that we had presented to you at that particular time. So if you recall, and it is in the memo that we sent to you, there are basically three options to move forward on this particular issue of short-term rentals. One of which is suspend the project right now, which apparently the board doesn't have interest in doing that. They want to move forward with something. Second would be to limit the scope of the project to the zoning code amendments only. The third would be adopt the short-term rental regulations previously drafted with the amendments identified by the board, as well as a registration fee. So if you want to do something, right now we have the option of just doing the ZDO or the option of doing the whole program. Another problem is the fact that the tourism dollars that we're going to supercharge the program are no longer available. That was $50,000 worth of startup money. So what I'm here to ask you is which of these options would you like us to advance? And secondly, if it's the full meal deal with the program, how are we going to backfill that $50,000 gap?
I'll write a check. Just kidding. So I raised my hand first and then I'll go to Ken. So I'd like to just do the ordinance. That's simple. You can get that done. However, maybe there's a 1C, and that is to get some sort of registration at a minimal fee, let's say $25 or something. I mean, you did this with, I'm actually very, very proud of what you guys did with your planning applications online. Talk about it for years. Something happens, you get it done in 2 weeks. Amazing stuff, amazing. But I'd like to see a fee, like a minimal fee of $25, a one-time fee, which means no enforcement, where we can make sure that people are registered. And if they fail to register, so we can collect tax, the tourism tax. And then if they fail to register, a big fine to register. And then and by the way, I'm going to just say this stuff and then you could tell me you're full of crap and you can't do this. We can't do this this time. The other is, number of units. If you have 50 units, I think it's 25 per unit. If it's 1 unit, it's 25. And this, you register one time, and that way we can make sure you're paying the tax. And that's it for now. And then later on, you guys can add enforcement and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to think of a simple way to get it done this year, but still provide some registration. And if I'm crazy, the registration is going to be really impossible to get it done in the year. Fine, just do the ordinance. Ken, your hand went away.
Well, you kind of took the words out of my mouth, so I don't need to say it twice.
All right, Sonia.
I'm just thinking that of all the work that went into what we put together, which we almost passed, and I'm wondering if we can capture all of that, but delay any implementation of anything until the $50,000 is available from tourism. I mean, call me Pollyanna, but I do believe that at some point we will recover from this coronavirus. People will begin traveling. We will begin collecting tourism tax, and we will build back the tourism department that had to be dismantled. I'm just curious if that is an option.
Well, Pollyanna, I think it is, but I don't know.
What, you think we're gonna have COVID forever, Jim?
No, we're not.
Okay.
The cure, it's gonna just disappear.
But is that an option to not lose all the great work that we've done and just delay, just pass it, but delay implementation till a time till we're able to have that 50,000 to jumpstart?
So can you answer that?
I'd look to Jennifer if you want to echo some top part of this topic, feel free to join the conversation. But I would say, yes, we could adopt something with a delayed implementation date. I looked at council too as well. I'm not sure, Jennifer, you want to add to that?
So yeah, two things. Yes, I think we could delay implementation. I don't know how long. I think we would need to delay implementation because there's going to be, regardless of what you do, there's some time needed just to get the logistics set up for whatever we decide to do. So the big question would be, for how long would you delay it? I want to be clear though, when you say just adopt the ordinance but don't do the registration, what ordinance? I need to understand which ordinance. So the ZDO amendment just says these are allowed. Any dwelling, anywhere, no rules. So there's nothing to enforce. It's like any other house, the same standards any other house would have. And so, you know, we can probably, is really tight because land use ordinances take a lot of procedure. We can probably get it done by the end of the year. You'll probably have one hearing to think about it, and the planning commission will get it first. And of course, we have had a lot of public feedback that they're interested in rules for these. So what you would be saying essentially is allow, but don't regulate. The other option is the county code amendment, which is drafted, as Commissioner Fisher mentioned, and you had reached consensus, or at either substantial consensus or at least 3 votes on all of the substance behind those rules in March. But the fee was the hang up. So could you adopt the rules into the county code but not require that people register? Yes, but then what's the enforcement mechanism for any of that? If we'd kind of be in the same boat we're in right now. We wouldn't have any paperwork about any of these things. And then who would do the enforcement with what money when we get complaints? I think you end up kind of in the same place of needing to fund the program.
All right, but you could set a date certain when it applies, 6 months from January. Yeah,
I think so. In my mind, I thought July 1. And then depending on what the budget situation is, I guess it could be, and I'll defer to Mr. Madcore on that question. Can they pull back later through some mechanism?
You could set it for a date certain.
okay.
If we're gonna, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Paul.
Yeah, so I guess both aspects that Jennifer spoke to, I think are important. I want to make sure, number one, that, you know, it's legal, you know, to have Airbnb or to have short-term rentals, and 2, that the regulations are in place. And I assume that there's regulations in place, and this is where there's a question. If there's a violation of a regulation, can we set fines associated with that help us recover and recoup the cost? So that's one question I have. I have more, but that's one. So do we have a fine structure with the regulation?
Yes, that was going to be part of the package, that there would be, in addition to the registration fee, you would be adopting fines for violations of the county code.
Okay, so great. So I'm supportive of both elements that we spoke to for the code amendments to allow all that to happen with the regulations. Okay. The other thing, which is somewhat interesting of an update, I've been, you know, it's been a while, but prior to the forest fires, maybe a couple months ago, I was listening to a national news thing on that Airbnb really tightened up their membership, that if there were complaints related to parties and mass gathering, not mass gatherings, but all the things that we're dealing with, it's a nationwide issue. So they've really internally took it upon themselves to control that. Now, that's just one organization. I don't know if others will follow, and some people just privately decide to market their own and not use one of these mechanisms, then that's hard to control. But cost recovery for I think the code enforcement obviously is what precipitated this or initiated this effort, and to leave that unaddressed is problematic. So I think we need to make sure that if there's a fine structure, that it adequately can fill the gap or make up the difference to some degree. We already have, you know, codes and code enforcement, but maybe they don't have the tools that maybe these regulations would give them to further that enforcement. Where we got hung up, I agree, I remember, was on, you know, I thought the high cost of that that annual fee or whatever it may be, whether it's one time. I just thought it was pretty stiff. That's my thought.
Thank you, Paul. So remember, Gary said this is not a 45-minute discussion. I'm good with moving forward with Sonia's idea. Paul seems to support it. Ken?
Yeah, I think so. We could look at enforcement being by complaint only for starters, well, in the interim. And then as part of our budget process this coming fiscal year, we could look at how we do the funding aspect of further enforcement and inspection and all the other stuff that we were talking about. So yeah, I'm good to go with Sonia's idea.
Dan?
One ask, if I can make the ask. So right now you are telling us to go forward with the entire program, which is a code amendment and the ZDO, adopting both of those. We will try our best, if that's the direction you're going to give us, to get that done by the end of the year. I cannot confirm that that will happen. But we will do everything within our power to make it so. Secondly, if you're going to delay it to a date certain, which I think that's what you said, Stephen, we had to have an exact date. I would suggest that we do July 1 of next year, because we can work that fee discussion and that fine discussion through our normal budgetary process that happens in February and March, and it will give us time to kind of wrap our head around that. And then also we have to reconnect with finance because they run a lot of the registration program as well. Jennifer, do you have any problems with any of that?
Well, my only thought would be, so I think the first reading, second reading process for the county code with a delay to July 1, we can do between now and the end of the year. What we had planned to do was follow up after, I mean, originally 6 months ago, follow up after with the zoning code amendment. And all the zoning code amendment says is it's allowed. There's no rules being adopted. That's all already done at that point. And we just clear up the zoning code because it doesn't say it's prohibited. It just doesn't say. So I'd still like to do that because I think getting the zoning code amendment done by the end of December is going to be a bit of a heavy lift. And then you've got both of the conversations going on at the same time, which I think might increase the confusion, but we can certainly try. But the other possibility would just come back and do that in the first 6 months of next year, so it's done before July 1st.
Gotta try to get it done before the end of the year. Otherwise, I have this feeling. All right, so Ken, and then let's finish up.
One quick question of Mr. Madcore. So if we go with a date certain of July 1st, and we find circumstances require us to extend that date certain, do we have the authority to do so?
Yes, you do, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so you got direction?
Sounds like it.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you. Gary?
Good work. That was only about 15 minutes. Good job, commissioners. All right, next. If the board wishes to make a formal statement condemning white supremacy, here's the background. Chair Bernard read a statement at Thursday's business meeting. That was from him only. A few of you have asked if you could sign on to it. This is the opportunity for you to discuss if you wish to do that, of course. Obviously, I think as an organization, we would oppose the idea of white supremacy, but the question is, do you want to formally join on to the statement Chair Bernard made, make any edits, or make a different statement? So that is the question for you today.
So I want to give you a little background before I go to you, Paul. On the meeting with the town hall, internal town hall, the question was asked, what does Clackamas County, I haven't heard from the commissioners, what does Clackamas County commissioners think about white supremacy? And that's where that came from. And I just wanted to make sure that the employees at Clackamas County heard, as well as Clackamas County residents. So Paul, Sonia, and then Ken.
Yeah, you know, when you read that on Thursday, Jim, I really didn't have much heartburn because I was of the mindset that the resolution we passed on racism earlier in the summer really covered all of that. And so that's point number one. But however, you know, to call out that one in particular is something that we really didn't discuss. And there's a lot of we's in there. So from a process standpoint, you know, the last we want to go on record. Like I said, I had no issue with it, and I was fine leaving it lie as it was. and so on. So essentially, we've already signed on to it because you basically said we, and we have done that, and no one's contesting it. And I'm happy to say, for the state, for the record, that I support that. So it's all said and done. However, if we were to do another document, then I would write it a little bit differently. And or we just refine the resolution. Now, this morning, I had a great conversation with Martine, and unfortunately, Martine had a conflict and she couldn't join us this morning for this conversation. But we seem to be like-minded on the approach that maybe the best thing to do is refine, if needed, if wanted, if desired, to refine the resolution and keep it into one document. But I want to add, and I'm also talk to Martine about this as well, all these points I'm making here. And again, we seem to be of like mind, that really the real issue is, instead of calling out all these different ideologies or organizations, when you distill this all down, it's about hate-based violence. And hate-based violence is unacceptable. And no matter how it's applied, no matter where it's at. And, you know, I've got history with, you know, being a victim of that. Members of my family have a history of being victims of hate-based violence. It's not good. It does not, it's oppression of sorts. It invokes fear. It invokes terror. And really, that is what is really going on around us right now. And when I say locally, I mean, I know there's a national perspective of this and there's a local perspective of this, but what's going on north of us in the city of Portland is frightening a lot of people. And I don't want to call out an organization. And I totally respect people, our Constitution and people's rights to protest. It's not about the protest. It's about the violence is associated with throwing Molotov cocktails and setting people on fire or trying to set people on fire, especially law enforcement folks who are, by the way, employees of the county, not necessarily in Portland, but they've been backfilling. But the concern is it's spreading. You know, the recent article in Pamplin is that the authorities are looking for someone with a gas can that started the fire on Elk Island in Milwaukee. That was a headline. So we don't know what that was based on, don't know what the intent was, if that was associated, but certainly arson is a scary thing. And we have the fires that are being started or attempted to be started, burning down, buildings in Portland and anything that represents law enforcement, apparently, or the justice system, courthouses, the Justice Center in Portland, even the brand new Multnomah County Courthouse. They had to defend that and guard that the other day because they were attempting to spray paint that. So I think the best way, instead of calling out organizations or ideologies, is to have a line in there that addresses hate-based violence and that it's not acceptable. And if we do anything at all, but I think that having a work session on this with Martine present would be extremely valuable and worthwhile. In the meantime, we're all on record. And so if that's the point, that's the point. That's my input. I'd like to hear from y'all.
I want to add something. So there's no calling out of any particular group. I mean, it may be a philosophy, white supremacy, but there's no group. I looked it up. I tried to look up, is there such a group as white supremacy group? No.
Well,
it's just a philosophy, maybe.
Well, I mean, you're right. You're right. But some people are thinking that it is a group, and they're associating that unfortunately, and one of the groups being called out is law enforcement. That somehow that's white supremacists, and that's wrong. We have employees that represent law and order. We have a justice system that represents law and order, and that's wrong to be used as a label. So I agree. I mean, it's like a lot of these ideologies. Some people think they're groups, and some people say, "I am X group." I'm not going to name the group.
Okay, Sonia, Ken, and then Sonia, Ken, and then Paul. Your hands up again.
No, I'm taking it down.
Okay, Sonia.
Yeah, thanks. I think these conversations are really healthy and good, and I really appreciate everyone's perspective. Jim, I already posted on my Commissioner Fisher page this statement, so I have already adopted it. I think it's really important that we take a stand against white supremacy, especially given what our federal partners say about white supremacist tied groups being the greatest threat to our as domestic terrorists. So I think it's really, really important. I was there on the town hall. I heard the concerns, and I think this statement is good, and I stand by it. But I think what Paul is saying is very important. And I'm just thinking that possibly, I like what he says about digging a little deeper and talking about it, because in all of my conversations with John Wentworth, with law enforcement, with folks in Multnomah County, with the legal community, we can have a system where we are promoting law and order and dismantling systemic racism. And that perspective is one that, and I don't want to speak for any of my colleagues, but I do believe we all really hold firmly to that. And I know that our district attorney-elect and also our current district attorney and just our whole law enforcement, it's both. And I think that's gotten lost in the dialogue for our region. And I don't like that. I think that violence needs to be condemned. I think perpetrators of violence need to be held accountable. I don't think it should be based on any form of political ideology, that some groups are treated differently than others. So maybe that, Paul, is a separate statement, and it's very timely. I mean, I get so concerned. It's like, oh my gosh, what else has happened now? Every time you look at the news, it's like, where's the other point of violence? And it's just not okay. The violence is not okay, but we need to do both. So, but I think they're different questions. This question that Jim answered really came from our employee town hall, and I am fine with that standing as it is and maybe looking to address Paul's concern, because it's a really legitimate perspective. I appreciate it very much.
I think it's definitely a discussion we could have. It might be a good town hall subject. I don't know. Ken?
The only reason I asked to have this as a discussion, quite frankly, was simply that I was not aware that statement was going to be made, and I wanted to have the opportunity to make it unequivocal that I support the statement by signing on to it. It's really that simple for me. I'm certainly not opposed to further discussions, but I find any form of so-called supremacy inappropriate. We are a nation of immigrants. We have been from day one, and will continue to be, quite frankly. So I simply wanted to sign on to what that statement says, which is we absolutely are in opposition to white supremacy. That simple.
Paul?
Yeah, just lastly, I appreciate everyone's comments. The reason I think this is important to just take it to the step of refining and speaking to the hate-based violence is particularly because there's a vacuum right now. I don't want to call out any officials in other parts of the metro region. I don't want to do that. I don't want to call out organizations. That's not my goal. I think we need to get down to the core of it and make sure, number one, we're addressing hate-based violence, and number two, we are supporting our system, our constitution, a system of justice, a system of law and order that makes people feel good. And right now there's a vacuum because no one's speaking to that. And I think that's a big call. And I'm worried about a town hall because I'm worried about people putting names, and I think that would be unfair. I think that would be problematic when people start calling out elected officials. And I don't think right now, with an election in front of us, that's a good thing to do. I just think speaking to the core of hatred when it reveals itself as violence is a bad thing. And again, there's a lot of people that are in the justice and law enforcement that feel that they're being attacked and labeled, and they're not, and it's unfair. And certainly there's a bad apple here and there's a bad apple there. I get that, but that doesn't mean you throw, throw that label that law enforcement somehow is a bad thing. Or I'm not going to even say the label because it's even unfair to even mention that. It's bad enough as it is, but they need to have support as well. And those are employees of our county as well.
All right, Sonia, and then let's finish up.
Yeah, I just think any violence, I mean, I don't even think you need to qualify it with hate-based people, violence, pointing lasers, throwing water bottles, all of those things that, that there's, property destruction, but really the person on person stuff is, lighting stuff on fire. I mean, it's just terrible, but it can go up from both sides. And I want to separate it from political ideology. It's just not okay that that's going on. And as leaders, we really do need to stand up for, first of all, we need to dismantle systemic racism, and we need accountability for people committing crimes. And in our county, there is no doubt, I have talked to our district attorney, and for certain crimes that would be committed, and if there's evidence in a police report, that we will prosecute. And that's important. And it's an important message too, I think, during this time.
All right, well, thank you. Gary, what's up?
Sorry, I don't have clarity. So on this actual statement then, are you just want to leave it and you can individually choose to make it your own, or do you want to formally as a board have it come from you?
I'll make a motion to formally adopt the statement as our board statement.
I would prefer that we frankly look at the changing the resolution to refine and reflect it in a way that gets to the core of the situation without calling out any one particular group. I think there's an imbalance there. There's a vacuum there that needs to be addressed.
So Paul, I think we should see if there's a second and then talk about it. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, now Paul, I just want to see if we were going to move forward on it or not. So I heard what you said. I mean, do you guys want to amend it? I mean, amend with amendments?
I have my hand.
Yeah, Martha has her hand up.
Oh, okay, Martha.
So why don't we give Commissioner Savas a chance to make some amendments to it? I think that would be the fair way to go. That would be my suggestion.
And I'd like to do it with, with the five of us. And Martine.
And the other thing is, I did look up white supremacy. It's a noun. This is the Oxford definition. The belief that white people constitute a superior race and should therefore dominate society, typically to the exclusion or detriment of other racial and ethnic groups, in particular Black or Jewish people. Well, I would add with that, of course, all people of color. So I'd make that a little bit broader than that. And I do think you can name groups, they're out there. Proud Boys, right? I think there's a list of them. All you have to do is look at the Southern Law Poverty Center. They have all of that information. So I just think for the sake of clarity, and I agree with the statement, but I do think I would like to see Commissioner Savas, some of his ideas incorporated into it, and let's wordsmith it a little more.
So should we schedule this for a deeper discussion, maybe in a work session? We have a motion on the floor in a second. We can vote on it, or the motion, Sonia?
I really appreciate what Commissioner Savas is saying, but I think it's a separate statement. This statement is a standalone statement against white supremacy, I think is important. A statement against violence and against an overall statement against violence is a separate statement that I think we should consider doing and have a deeper discussion about that. But I've already adopted this statement. I know Commissioner Humberston has. I think this statement should move forward. And we can do it individually, that would be fine, or we can do it as a board. If the majority of us aren't comfortable moving forward with the board, then of course we do it individually.
All right, Ken?
Mr. Chairman, out of respect for my colleagues, I'm going to rescind my second. I think we can do what Commissioner Fisher suggested and adopt it individually. Out of respect for Mr. Savis's concerns and the fact that he's had some discussions with our new Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director, probably a more in-depth discussion with her and her team is appropriate. So I wouldn't mind us doing it as sort of a retreat issue, if you will, going forward. But I'll rescind my second at this point.
Okay,
Is there a second?
I'll
All right.
second.
It's rescinded.
What?
Oh,
Wait,
I'll
Martha, you seconded it. Okay.
And let's work this through.
No, so Sonia's motion was to make this a commission statement.
You have two separate things on the floor. Now you have two separate things on the floor. So if the motion is rescinded, then
No, the second was rescinded.
that the second was rescinded, so is procedure wise. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, Martha seconded. I'm confused on what Martha seconded.
Well, I'm agreeing with Ken.
then you don't want to, you don't second.
All right.
I didn't
Okay.
place a motion on the floor. The motion on the floor is Sonia's motion. That's
Okay.
been, I'm rescinding the second.
So right now we're making it our own. And we
Individual.
can have a further discussion at another time.
And I will state, in my opinion, white supremacy and violence go hand in hand. That's part of the terror. And you saw that in Germany.
Sure.
Part of it is really terrorizing and killing and murdering people and behaving in ways. I mean, we've had genocides from not just Germany, but Rwanda was another example, and then the Armenians were slaughtered by the Turks. That was where Hitler got his methodology of what to do. And the other danger we're facing right now that is the political flashpoint is this. We have Black Lives Matter, which is legitimately attempting to help us understand systemic racism and what we can do to really bring that to the fore. And it's because people, that's true. But the other, quite frankly, tenor that's going on in this country, not just here, is that we have other people who are white and rural and in other ways, people that are feeling disenfranchised. And it's so polarized, it gives rise to demagoguery. And that is essentially what we're seeing now. And I've mentioned this to Commissioner Fisher. If you really want to understand the polarity, Stamped from the Beginning is a good way to look at how you understand what systemic racism is. And then the other one is Strangers in Their Own Land, which was written by a sociologist who attempted to try and really understand where the angst was in the South and other areas, and why some people were going in that direction. And if we can understand that both groups in one way or another, whatever, are feeling powerless and disenfranchised. So that's the common theme of all of this that's been going on. With what's been going on nationally and locally. And that's one of the reasons why this is so politically charged. So that's just my opinion, but for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you, Martha. I mean, yes, thank you, Martha. Paul.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned early on when this came up, this is kind of personal to me, and Martha touched on it. So as I mentioned to you before, and I'll mention it for those maybe who have not heard it, all four of my grandparents basically escaped Constantinople area in Turkey during the period of time where the Greeks mass genocide by the Turks, and there was between 450,000 to 750,000 Greeks that were killed, and some of those were friends and family of my grandparents, ancestors of mine. So. And it was a anti-Greek sentiment. So when anyone has the word anti or hate or anything else, it's personal. And I can understand that for any other victims, whether it's the color of their skin or what part of the world they came from. So this is personal. I can understand why so many people is upsetting when they hear and see violence taking place in this country, because we are the melting pot. This country's founded on a place of freedom of speech. You can be who you are. You've got rights, and again, basically everyone's welcome. So my family immigrated here. So whenever anyone has anti anything in front of it, it's a red flag for me. The only time I use anti is anti-displacement, and that's not a people, that's a policy. But you know, this just strikes to the core, and that's why, again, it's based on hate. There's nothing good about war. There's nothing good about killing people, and there's nothing good about genocide. And frankly, I think a lot of people are concerned that the civil unrest that's taking place in Portland, it scares a lot of people, and we need to understand that, and we need to understand that that affects people of color as well as, you know, the people that have lived here their whole entire lives. Everyone's a victim of that. Thank you.
You're on mute, Jim.
What about anti-establishmentarianism?
I knew that.
Can you spell that? All right, well, it's great discussion. Sonia, I'm sorry your motion failed, so accept it as your own. And I think there'll be lots of discussions for a long time about what's going on in this country. Sonia.
So I've participated in all of the town halls, except for the specific people of color conversations that happened without all the open town halls. And there are some very significant concerns about the leadership of this county and not making where we stand and our leadership on these issues. I'm very concerned about us not agreeing that we just agree with this statement. I'm very concerned about that message that gives to our employees. And I just want to put that on the record. I think Commissioner Savas has some valid points. I would like to explore them in a separate statement. And I would like Gary Schmidt to give us some guidance, because he has also participated in each and every town hall. And I'm just concerned about morale and what this action today says to the over 2,000 employees of Clackamas County.
So Commissioner Fisher, you
Well,
said
I just would like Gary to respond.
Gary?
This question came up in the employee town hall, as Chair Bernard said. I will tell you what I said. I said, as county administrator, I absolutely oppose and condemn white supremacy at Clackamas County, but I don't speak for the Board of County Commissioners. And that's when Chair Bernard jumped in and said, I will speak up, and he spoke for himself. This statement came out on Thursday from Jim. And honestly, this is already past, commissioners. This is old news already. So the fact you're even debating this is sort of respectfully embarrassing. Either you oppose it or you don't. I'm saying it. I oppose white supremacy. I have no anxiety of saying that. Yes, we should oppose all hate-based rhetoric, of course. So at this point, the statements made by Jim, if you individually want to weigh in, you can or cannot. I speak on behalf of the staff, and I just spoke. Thank you.
So, Gary, I have a question. I'm sorry, I was interrupted. Where are we hearing that this is, I haven't heard from anyone and any particular person that this is a matter of morale or a matter of, I just am trying to figure out where this is coming from. Are people demoralized as staff people because we're not making a statement? Is that the?
I have not heard that directly. I'm telling you, at the employee town hall, it had 200 employees, almost 10% of, well, not 10%, close to 10% of our employee base. There was concern. And when I said what I just said, there was smiles on the screen where people were relieved that that sort of a statement was made.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher, where have you heard this from?
I have heard it from town halls there that I've listened in on. It's not just the town hall that we just had, but a listening session also, where there was a statement that our leadership hasn't taken. I'm not quite sure what the statement was exactly, but Gary, you may recall.
That's true. I'm sorry. That's correct. There are 9 listening sessions with employees. Most of them were for employees who self-identify as people of color only. And it was a consistent theme. Why have our county commissioners not spoken up? This was way back when George Floyd was murdered. You have made subsequent statements, but at first you did not make an immediate statement.
But
Neither did I, which is why I did as county administrator in several emails that I've sent.
so Commissioner Fisher, are you hearing from external people as well then, other over and above listening sessions?
There was listening sessions after we made a statement that indicated that we have not provided the leadership necessary in this time.
That's why I did it.
Yes. And I am just concerned about what this will say to our employees. I think the statement that Jim presented is basic enough, but I do think we need to make more statements.
Well, as a parent who, I have a mixed, I have a Korean son. And as I've said before, I've experienced personally a lot of this. And I'm just curious as to what would be detrimental for us to make our own individual statements of what we think and feel. I mean, I would like to include a conversation of what we've dealt with as a family.
Well, read a statement on Thursday. I mean, each of you could do your own statement on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, I don't really want to have something written for me. My experience, you don't have my experience. You didn't watch your kid get racially profiled. Sorry.
I know, but it's a statement that people want to hear.
But I want to make a statement. If you would, I want to make a statement based on my own experiences.
No problem.
Yeah.
And I think with this.
Go ahead, Martha. Go ahead.
And I think that's the important thing. Is I don't want. This is such for me an extremely personal topic. I don't want other people's words. I want my own words. And I will be glad to write something that reflects my opposition to the kinds of things that are going on. But I also would like to add something from my perspective, that the only way we're going to get through this is having compassion for one another. That doesn't say that. So this isn't about saying yes or no to one statement. It's your own personal notion of what you want to say and how thoughtful you want to be about it. And I think that's important. So I'll be glad to write my own statement, but it will be my statement and it will be my words and it will reflect my experience. And Paul, you've talked about your personal experience. A statement you make should reflect what you've dealt with and how it felt and what you found out from your family. That's where I am on this. I don't think we just have to do a blanket statement. I think I feel perfectly comfortable based on my own life and experience and my family making a statement about this.
Right.
So that's my suggestion. Well, that's what I'm going to do. Just let you know. So,
Paul?
okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, Martha's idea is not a bad idea, but I don't want to I think it's more powerful when all of us agree on something and it covers all these, not all these areas, but the topics that we discussed and I've outlined. And that's why I don't want to let this go. I think it's important that we do that for all the reasons that Commissioner Fisher said. But there's one thing I want to just maybe speak to is that there are a lot of people that expect the same thing. There's a vacuum right now about the violence that's taking place in Portland today. That is what I'm hearing from employees as well as our constituents. So what I feel personally is not as important as an elected leader in this county. We all have a responsibility to try to answer those questions or speak to those issues on behalf of our constituency. And what's happening here in Oregon, what's happening here in the metro region, is more about the violence in Portland than it is about a group that came here from wherever they came from a couple Saturdays ago. Okay, I don't want to mention names, but the issue here is different and it needs to be spoken to. And I think for this, all the reasons that Commissioner Fisher is passionate, that area has to be addressed. And I think the core of it is hate-based violence. And unfortunately, these hate groups or these anti-groups don't have good intentions.
Ken.
You know, and listening to the conversations that we've had today, and looking back at the number of resolutions that we have done, which are several on this issue, I think every single one of us have shown our heart with respect to where we are at on any form of discrimination against others. So we can always make statements. What we need to do going forward, quite frankly, is what are we going to do as a county commission? What are we going to do as a county commission to make sure that Clackamas County is a welcoming place for people to go to work and a welcoming place for people to live? And really, statements are wonderful. And yes, they show some leadership, but the real leadership is in what do we do as a county commission, making sure that if somebody applies for a job in Clackamas County to work for us, that they get a fair shake right from the beginning and are treated with respect on the job. And when somebody comes to the counter and asks for services from one of our county employees or from any of us, that they get treated with that same dignity and respect, regardless of their ethnicity or any other icity, if you will. So I hope we put more focus on that and a little less worry about just making statements without follow through.
Okay, we done?
I am.
Okay.
We have several items left on issues. Would you like to continue now or continue this afternoon?
15 minutes. We good for 15? Let's go 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, new topic, board holiday schedule and recess. First, Thanksgiving falls on Thursday, November 26th, which would be a business meeting day for you. Would you like to reschedule your business meeting to Wednesday, November 25th, or cancel your business meeting for that week?
Wednesday's fine with me.
Works for me.
Yeah, that's fine, I think.
Gary, how much do we expect to have on the agenda? I mean, do we need a meeting?
You do, based on all the things you've asked staff to do by December 31st, I would advise you to keep the meeting, yes.
All right, let's keep the meeting.
Okay, and then next, traditionally, this board has taken a recess the last 2 weeks of December, normally after the Christmas holiday through New Year's Day. So if you chose to do that again, that would be December 21st through January 3rd. Want to confirm if you indeed want to continue that tradition or not.
Does the work, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that unless we have some emergency thing we need to get done before the end of the year.
Please, not another one.
So Martha, just so you know, my last day is December 31st. At that day, you will be the chair until January 3rd. And hopefully the county will hold up.
Ken has his hand raised.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern about the 2-week hiatus is does the work that our staff are doing for us, are they still going to be able to get that done, and will they need us to meet?
No, because that would be the day before the Christmas holiday if you were to meet, and most people are off with their families. So this just gives us plenty of notice that we have to get it done by December 19th. So staff can get it done.
Then I'm good.
Paul?
Yeah, just one small thing to discuss. It's not really may be a correction, but I think we agreed last year that we would commit to electing the vice chair in December or at the same time every year. So whoever that new chair is would be that person for those 2 days, the new vice chair. So
Well, there won't be.
we've always, you know, when we discussed it last year, was it November or December, Gary? We agreed that we would stay on the same schedule and not change the nomination election process for vice chair.
You did approve a quasi policy, but it's in January. The first week in January, you identified the new vice chair.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. I got mixed up on the months.
The power.
So
Power.
I'm hearing then moving the November 26th business meeting to Wednesday, November 25th, and that yes to the 2-week recess, December 21st through January 3rd. I'm hearing yes to both.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Let's move on. Advisory boards and commissions. Christina, please go ahead.
Okay, so we just have one advisory board. It's a community action board staffed by Social Services Division. They currently have 4 openings. They received 1 application and are recommending 1 person for appointment. The 1 person is Sonia Agnew. She is recommended. It is her first appointment and her term would expire on 10/1/23.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We probably don't really need to poll on this. Do you really want to poll? Go ahead, poll us.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher?
She fell in the river.
Oh, no. We'll come back to her. Commissioner Humbertston?
Aye.
Commissioner Savis?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
And Chair Bernard?
Aye, motion carries 4-0. Next one.
All right, finally is Commissioner Communications.
We can do this in
I'd like to
5.
go first. I'll go first.
Okay.
I need to give you all an Ncprd update. We got a little bit of delay because of the fires, obviously. We lost a couple weeks, but we did have a really good meeting last Wednesday night. We got agreement on, unanimous agreement on the membership. So it went from, so it's now at 11 and agreed upon 11. So it'd be 1 from Milwaukee Center, 2 from Milwaukee, and 8 from the unincorporated areas. We also agreed on this, on the map. Staff put together a couple proposals on a map that for the sub areas or the areas, so we get geographic representation. We got unanimous vote on that. That is really good. So progress. We got a little bit, had some discussion about trying to jumpstart so we could get the DAB form sooner, a topic of that. And we spent some time about the appointment process and whether or not to institute the draft appointment process to get them seated. So I'm not sure if, what we're going to come up with on Wednesday, but I didn't know if there was any, Jim, you've been, I agree with your suggestions that there's got to be geographic representation and they got to respond to the communities. And so we put together a structure based on that. And I think I agree, a lot of other people agree that, like you said, there's got to be, they got to be responsive to the community that they're representing. And so we structured way back a methodology, if you will, that gave the citizen input to make sure that they were responsive and that the community supported the people that are going to represent them. So it's a pretty simple concept. And we're trying to move forward on it. And hopefully we can institute it as soon as possible. But if there's not support on Wednesday night to push forward with trying to jumpstart the appointment process, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know where we're all at. I could give you updates before where we were at. I'm doing that tonight, and I let the group know what I was going to be bringing before you that had the unanimous consent, which is again 8 to 11 members, and the geographic map of the sub areas.
Great. Who's next? Martha?
I'm fine. I don't have much to report.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ken?
I don't either at this point. Thank you.
Are they doing the theater or the movies down at the fairgrounds?
I don't know if they are at this point in time. I haven't had a chance to talk with Lori about that, so I don't have an answer.
All right, Sonia?
Yeah, nothing right now to report.
All right, same here. We're done with commissioner communications.
So I just, one thing, Jim, I was hoping for some dialogue about the NCPRD, but if you don't want to go there, that's all fine. That's good. So I'll jump to transportation if there's no other input on NCPRD.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So the
9 minutes.
yeah, so it won't take that long. As you heard, staff, you had Mike Besner and Jamie Stasny that were joined us this morning. We approved the letter and so on and talked about this. There was a statement that was made last night that basically suggested that there's a move afoot to make Oregon the first state in the nation to implement, I think, essentially a region-wide tolling of virtually, it sounds like everything. I'm not sure because we're trying to get clarity, but the statement was made that they want to be first in the nation. Now, who they is, I'm assuming is this is coming from one of the ODOT officials. And as you know, that's kind of under the auspices of the governor's office, if you will, and as is the OTC. So I'm not sure, but I just want to let you know that it kind of sent a little bit of a shock because we are not equipped to deal with alternatives. We don't have the transit stuff in place. So this is a big deal. And I think it really shook a lot of people up last evening. A number of things, but I just want to put it out there that I'm not sure exactly what that is. And that's why that issue of December 1st is such a big deal, because if they're just going to unload and give the details on December 1st and then vote on it, there's no opportunity for input. And that's troubling. So if this board is interested, I'm not suggesting we do it today, but if this board's interested in messaging similar letter to the OTC to say, you know what, this is a big issue. We are a county of the 3 counties that would be the most severely impacted, our constituents. And therefore we would like a 30-day comment or 30-day period of comment before a decision's made by the OTC. I think that would be in order, but apparently December 1st to give the details and then December 1st they vote on it. I'm sorry, that's not right.
Hey, got a question, Paul.
Pardon?
I got a question.
Sure, fire away.
So when you talked about a statewide tolling, that they could toll everything, it's an option to toll statewide, right? It's not that they're going to just institute tolling.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's statewide. I want to say that they wanted to be the first state in the nation. So it might be Metro, it might start with Metro region first. I don't know. I mean, it's not clear and I wish I could be more clear, but they're just not giving us the information.
But it's the ability to toll, not actually setting tolls for specific roads yet.
Yeah, they mentioned going to the legislature.
Okay. All right. Are you done with the transportation one?
Yep. So do you, if you want, I could pop, if you're all interested, I can bring back next week, or staff can bring back next week, a letter to the OTC asking for a 30-day comment period before they act.
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Anything else, guys? All right, we'll break for lunch. We'll see you at 1:30. Thank you.